The joke was advertising is 15% commission and 85% confusion. See, I think the very important point that anybody who starts up has to remember is that you must offer a difference. Is our brand big enough? Is the question that I keep asking. The brand is the most important thing.
This is the 60th episode of Dream 100 Show
with Mr. Sridhar Ramanujam,
founder of Integrated Brand.Comm.
Welcome to Dream 100 Show, listener. I'm your host, Savita Hosamani. Each week, we interview today's most successful and inspiring business owners with winning teams who had the courage to chase their dreams in spite of all their challenges. Join us as we bring you everything that goes on in the minds of successful business owners during decision-making process and gain insights to make smarter decisions.
In today's episode, we talk to Mr. Sridhar, who founded Integrated Brand.Comm after holding high positions in top companies. He has a demonstrated history of working in the public relations and communications industry. His every sentence speaks volumes of experience. He himself is an IIM graduate and coaches IIM students. So let's hear it out from him, how he started this wonderful journey and climbed the ladder of success right here, right now on Dream 100 Show podcast. So welcome to Dream 100 Show, Mr. Sridhar. It's truly an honor and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to our discussion. Sure.
So what were the challenges which you faced when you started off with your own enterprise?
I think the biggest change is the change in mindset. See, all the while you're working with a large company with a big infrastructure, we work on some of the biggest brands. You might have been traveling business class. I mean, you know, all the perks and paraphernalia that comes with working with a large company and being a CEO. So I think the biggest change when I did a startup, and that startup was in December 98, it seems such a long time ago, is the fact that you have to start thinking like a startup. Whatever your background may have been, wherever you have, come from, whatever your financial position as an individual. So I think that startup mindset was very, very important. I remember in the early stages, very often we had some clients in Bangalore, and I used to travel by bus. When it's your own company, you don't stand on, position and what I should be doing. And I've been used to traveling in this manner. So I think the significant change in my mind is the change in mindset, that this is your company. I think that same attitude has continued right through. We have heard of people who pledge their wives' jewels and run a business, etc. In our case, I remember mortgaging the house that we live in. These are things that you don't even think about because you have to do it to sustain the business. So I think the biggest shift is, this is my baby. I'd like to make it successful. So whatever that needs to make it successful, I will try and do, was what I sort of looked at.
Okay, so one is the change of mindset from the employee mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset. And then how confident were you that you would be able to take off this business?
See, I think the very important point that anybody who starts up has to remember is that you must offer a difference to your customers. See, if you're just going to be one more enterprise, I'm not sure how it will succeed. So I think one of the things that we realized, and in those days, advertising was all about commission. The joke was advertising is 15% commission and 85% confusion. So clients felt that, agencies are pushing me to spend more money because their revenue is linked to the client's spending. So, given that scenario, we said, let's do something very different. We will charge a retainer fee for the services that we render, depending on how many senior people are involved, what is the nature of work and involved, etc. So it has no relation to what you are spending as a client. So this seemed like a very interesting proposition to clients who felt that they were being a bit shortchanged by advertising agencies. So the business model or the proposition that you're offering has to be different, and that was I think, the first point of difference that we had, and then we had to keep building on those differences, because one of the things that you will realize in business is the moment you offer something, your competition can very easily offer it as well, and we are seeing it across categories, even in high tech areas like electronics. So I think you need to constantly upgrade what you're offering, and I think that's something that we have been trying to do.
Awesome. So you solved the customer's pain point of confusion to clarity, and thereby, so how did you start building up your customer base?
I think one of the things that was an advantage for me is because I had spent close to 15 years in the advertising business. I had worked with some of the big brands, and many of the customers that I had serviced from different agencies came to us at some point of time. Now, many of them were also waiting to see whether I would sustain, and whether what is the range of services that we offered, and what is the sort of work that we were doing. So I think one of the biggest things in a service business is to have a relationship with clients. And in fact, most advertising agencies have been started out because the person who led it was a trusted advisor to many clients. So they were dealing with, though they may have been dealing with an organization, the contact point is usually one individual. Now, the downside to something like this is that if one of your colleagues is also very strong and very well connected with the client, chances are that if he does something on his own, the client may move with him. So you have to build your own mechanisms to ensure that these sort of separations don't happen. So I think the starting point is a strong relationship with client built over years, where he trusts you as a professional and he knows that you will do your best given the circumstances. So I think that was one of the things that worked for us over the years.
So now I would like to understand, what are the key components when it comes to relationship building? First, with your own team, your internal team, how do you build the trust?
See, I think one of the things that we have to build is confidence. See, very often it's easy to make statements. It's very often easy to, give all these lofty sounding things saying that you are our most important asset and all that nonsense. But people quickly see through whether you are really standing by what you say, or you're just, one of those people who believes in making flowery speeches. I'll give you one example. There was one head of public relations that we had, and there was a junior, almost like an entry level person, who was a student of mine from one of my MBA classes. And she had done something wrong, apparently. I just came back from lunch, and this lady was bawling her out in the public area. And then I called her and said, "This is not how Brand.Com operates. I think, we respect people as individuals. If she had a problem, I'm quite sure you have other ways of dealing with this, not shouting at her in the common area. When other people are listening, I mean, it'll affect her morale, and it's not the way we operate. I mean, this is not Brand.Com." So she was very upset because she was also a very senior professional. She left, and it affected us because she was heading our public relations practice, and I was not such a great. My background had been primarily advertising, but I still believed that the principles of how you treat your employees is very important. And even if it meant a temporary setback in our business, it was worth it. And so when you send out a strong signal like that, saying that people really matter and we will back you, I think that's a strong signal. That is one important thing that we have tried to do. We always believed in the power of the individual and the value of the team. It's not that one outstanding individual can build a team, and if the other team members are not cooperative or not doing their best, then clearly you are operating suboptimally. So I think this philosophy has helped us, and our employees see this. So, for example, we have people who leave us and go to different organizations, and then they really say that, I think we were much happier here because here people are really valued. So, invariably, I call all our employees on their birthdays. I congratulate them on their work anniversaries. So we try to do a lot of things which I believe is personalized. So to give you an example, in Chennai, for example, we've had more or less the same team of 15 to 18 people staying with us for several years in an industry which has a very high attrition rate. Because each one feels like a family member, and I think it's not only me. I mean, they have created a culture like that. So I think organization building is a very slow process, but you have to be committed to it and keep doing it in a systematic manner.
Awesome. So when you say that there was a culture, so how do you communicate the culture? Like, how did you guys start coming out with the values of your organization?
See, I would like to think that we did this mission and vision statement and all that much later. In the early stages, we were a relatively small company, so I think a lot of I would individually talk to a lot of people. So I think when you are, even now our staff strength is probably less than 80. So I know most of the people. If someone is getting married or if someone's having a bereavement, all these things are indicative of the fact that employees matter to you. I don't know whether when we have 1,000 employees, whether we will be able to do it, but thanks to social media and the internet, we are able to reach out to people very, very effectively. So I think we have not stood on culture. We have many Friday evening get-togethers. So a lot of things done over a period of time. Maybe over the last 2 3 years, it's been a bit slow because of COVID and the attendant problems. But I would say personal involvement in the lives of some of our employees has really been one of our strengths.
Wow. So during COVID time, people started working from home. So
Yes.
since there was no personal interaction, did it affect the morale of the team?
See, we still would have, like, for example, that on Friday evening they would do a chai pe charcha. So people would just come on the Zoom call at 4:30 or something. Birthdays, we would go on the Zoom. Work anniversaries, we would do things on the Zoom. So I think there it definitely. If I'd be lying if I said it was not a challenge, because somebody's sitting in Sikkim, somebody's sitting in Kerala, somebody's sitting in Bombay, and yet you're trying to work together. But I'm very confident that it did not affect our productivity in any manner, because 21-22 financial year was our best year ever in terms of both top line and bottom line. So, and this year, we were basically working from home. So, obviously, one of the advantages of working from home is your costs are less. People don't spend, you are from Bangalore, so the time that we spend going to and coming back from work. So, those were things that they avoided. And most importantly, I felt because people were working from home, I found their responsiveness was amazing. People would be responding to some messages at 5:30 in the morning. I'm unfortunately a morning person, so I get up at 4:30 to 5 every day. So when I look at the phone, I see that people are responding. There is somebody online, so which may or may not happen in the traditional work environment. So I think there were many pluses and minuses, but in a service business, we will be guided by what our clients say. Now, some of our clients do want physical meetings because they feel more comfortable that way. So I think we will sort of grope our way through this hybrid model and see how things work out. So I don't think we have completely cracked the problem, but I think there have been significant learnings from this.
Awesome. So, in spite of having a strong team together and moving things forward, it so happens that some performers, due to the kind of opportunities available to them, they tend to move on and they tend to leave the organization. So, during such times, how does the business owner feel, and how does it impact the ROI?
See, I think two, three things to need to realize that one, this is a people business in the sense that, if we are handling your client, very often the only person you will come into contact with will be the person who's servicing your business. And if he's responsive, which is what we tell our people, if you're proactive, responsive, and empathetic, they will think Brandcom is like this. But if you are not any of these things, they will think that Brandcom doesn't care and it's lackadaisical and things like that. So we've had good people, and sometimes these good people will leave because the communication business is actually, especially over the last 2 years, the attrition rate has been very high, and the supply of, I would say, the demand for jobs is far more than we can cope with. So people get tempted. People are off. If, let's say, if I have a client and I need a servicing person who's strong, I don't mind giving 40% because there is no, what shall I say, discussion amongst us as an industry to have some self-regulation. So everybody is poaching and doing what is necessary to sustain themselves, and I don't blame them for that. So what we have to do as an organization is we do two or three things. If somebody is really good, we try to outprice them from the market, because today, as millennials, money is a very, very important aspect of this whole business. At one point of time, I knew there were several of us who stayed with me simply because they had a great personal equation with me. Today, I don't know whether these sort of things operate as much as they used to operate in the past. So I think one is to take care of this 20% of the people we know account for 80% of the productivity. So some of the people who are really important to our business, we try and designate them. We try and pay them to the best of our ability. But everywhere we have tried to keep backups, because what is happening is the client wants continuity in what he's doing. And if I used to do this regularly, in the sense that all key clients I would meet so that they would know. And you maybe even laugh at this when we first go to a meeting asking for the business. The first, as we are leaving, and we might have made a good impression, so the head of the client office will say, okay, tell me what is the guarantee that this team which presented will be here 1 year from now. So I would say the only person who will be here next year will be me. I cannot guarantee anybody else, but we will do our best. We will ensure, and they would, laugh at my frankness, but probably realize that this business is like that. But our strategy has been to get a lot of youngsters and train them. See, I believe one is, if you find the people with the right attitude and train them, today's kids are very smart. I mean, there is absolutely, of course, we have certain basic criteria that the person should communicate well, because we are in the communication business. So we test them for writing and speaking, etc. But I think they have, some of the people gives, see, our business works primarily in public relations. So how does it work? You are the client, you have something to communicate to the media, and you want me to do it. So how I pitch that to the journalist determines, whether it's going to appear in print or not. And our success is determined by how many of my hit rate, basically. But I find some of these young people are thinking really differently and working very, very effectively. So, and I think one of the things that we tell our people to be is to be confident, because in PR, unlike advertising, you're talking to the CEO very often, because when you do a interview, you will be present with the journalist and the CEO will be there. So if you have to give a confidence that you're not a trainee, you're not a young person who does not know what she's talking about. So I think it's been very successful from our point of view with the way our young people have responded to the challenge and have grown with the job. And I have a certain benchmark in my mind. If I say if somebody works with me for 2 years, it's great, because we are not paying them so much at the entry level because they're new, and they are contributing significantly to holding the business together. So I think we have to have a mix. In fact, our success rate with lateral hires has not been very good, but with young people, it has been extremely successful.
So it's been a win-win situation.
Yes, I think so.
Mhm. Awesome. So when it comes to scaling a business, so what are the challenges which you faced?
Yeah. I think one of the challenges we are still facing is that while we have nearly 60 clients, I'm not very happy with some of the brands that we work with, in the sense that, we have made some of these small brands very big thanks to our efforts and the client's strategy, etc. But let's say if you look at the client roster, there may not be an Infosys, there may not be a TCS, there may not be a Titan, there may not be So, to my mind, the biggest challenge in scaling up is the big brands may not think that you're capable of handling their business. Nobody wants to take a risk, as they say. You never get fired for hiring IBM, right? So it's very easy to make the big agency or the big organization sort of choice. And so I think that's one of the areas that we are really working on, and that's where we have a clear strategy and plan and focus. So I think one of the biggest challenges for scaling up has been that. The other thing is, in other businesses, you might need more facilities, you might need more infrastructure. We don't need any of those things, because all we need is for good people to join our business. So is our brand big enough is the question that I keep asking myself. So why should somebody from a top flight communication company come and join Brand.com? So then if there is it's not a clear case of this brand is okay for me, then you're going to have a challenge. So, and your success is going to depend on the number of people and the quality of people that you have. So I think these are some of the challenges of scaling up. It's not capital, it's not any of those things. And it is also that, if it is too dependent on one or two individuals, how much can two or three people do? So I think broad basing the management width and getting more people who have the capability to acquire business is really one of the biggest challenges for us in scaling.
Awesome. So, like when it comes to business, no business will have a linear curve. There will be ups and downs. So, when you face a downslide in business, what is the fallback option as a business owner you
Yeah,
think you have?
yeah. It's a very relevant question and something that we have faced frequently. I'll tell you our own history so that'll give you. We started as Brand.com. So you know what happened to the .com thing? We had a great boom and then a bust. Then because we were in Bangalore, we did a lot of software. Then software went through a downturn. Then we were very closely associated with the Future Group. In fact, a lot of our growth in the early years of our existence were due to the Future Group. So wherever they set up Big Bazaar or let's say a big operation, we would set up an office because they were a very, very important part of our business. Then Mr. Biani was called the retail king, and we had a role to play in promoting him as one of the biggest visionaries in the retail business. And then retail went through a downturn. So, with each one of these phases, we have both grown and shrunk. So, I think what we did after the retail, difficulties were to de-risk our business entirely. So today, for example, although we are a very strong suite in education, we are working across categories. We work across healthcare, we work across education, we work across consumer durables, we work across FMCG. So what happens is even if one of these sectors takes a hit, so this is, I think we've learned from some of the software majors, if you remember Infosys, etc., where they were trying to build other geographies so that they are not only dependent on the US. So I think what one of the great things about our business is that we tend to learn so much from our clients. I mean, we see clients doing so many permutation combinations, constantly being paranoid about strategy and whether they're doing the right things. So if you observe your clients and you keep talking to them, chances are that you'll realize, right? For example, when we have been doing our budgets for this year, one of the biggest challenges I fear is that this year may not be such a great year, given the fact that there inflation is there and there's the Ukrainian war and things like that. So we have been fairly cautious in recruitment, for instance, saying that, should we recruit this person or should we not recruit this person? Should we wait for the second quarter? So I think we keep constantly monitoring the environment and talking to clients continually because they have a much bigger macro picture because they're borrowing from banks, they're thinking of going public. So a lot of information that they have, like for example, we do work with startups, and you might, as you know, the funding to startups it's not exactly dried up, but it is not as flush as it was a couple of years ago. So then if your business component of startups is very high, you need to rethink and say, hey, am I having a problem here? So I think these are some of the things that you need to, as someone said, only the paranoid survive. So you're constantly worried about what's happening. So I think that's part of being an entrepreneur. You're always worried.
Okay, great. After the pandemic, digital marketing and digital infrastructure suddenly gained so much of prominence, and every small business also felt that they have to make their digital presence and things like that. So how quickly was your team and your business able to take up the challenge of the new digitalization of businesses?
See, I think thankfully, because we were in the PR business and we work constantly with, say, newspapers, and the newspapers suddenly realized that their, online edition is far more important than than the printed edition, and more and more of our main constituents, the media, started digitizing. So we had no option but to follow them. Thankfully, we have a lot of young people who are very geared in the digital medium. But I would still think that the future is how we can integrate some of the traditional offerings like PR with social media. Because today the customer sees everything on his phone, right? I mean, there is no, I don't know how many of the young people actually read a newspaper physically, right? So I think these are the changes and challenges that are constantly coming. We have a nurse to take care of one of the older people in our house, and she's constantly on the phone. I mean, I think I would say, or if she's awake 18 hours, maybe 16 hours, she's on the phone. So this is the new, norm, it seems. And how we adapt is going to be the challenge. We are constantly, moving with the times. But I still think we have miles to go before we sleep. It's an ongoing challenge. But thankfully, because we have a lot of young people who are not averse to technology, I think we are ahead of the curve as we speak.
Mhm. Awesome. So, since you go and teach students in MBA schools as well, and you also have got that experience of working in corporates as well as the challenge of running a business and expanding it also. So, when it comes to theoretical teaching and the practical implementation, so, what are the wide differences that you find, or is there no difference?
No, there is. See, actually, I have been teaching. I have not taught in these two COVID years. First year I did. So I have been teaching since mid 90s. Okay, and in many years, I would teach 100 hours, which is more than what full time faculty would teach. And I was teaching in places like Calicut and Mysore and very Vizag, and of course a lot in Bangalore, Hyderabad, different places. So what I brought to the table was I was a practicing manager. So I would share the case studies where we actually failed, saying that this is what happened. We didn't understand the consumer. This is what happened. Whereas, I mean, many of the cases I am not even shouldn't even places like IIM are either McDonald's or Apple or while some of them are in the country now, but these are cases which are designed and done abroad, etc. The Indian scenario and the problems are very unique. And I, because I had worked intimately with some of the biggest names in advertising, would share a TV commercial and say what was the thinking behind it and why would you do something like this? What are the advantages of this? So I think one of the reasons why my courses on advertising and brand management were popular, and then what I would do is there would be a specific problem which my company would be grouping with. We would ask the students to discuss it so that we'll get a fresh perspective. So they're actually discussing a live problem rather than something that happened 25 years ago. In fact, when we were doing a brand consulting business, many of our initial employees were people who had done my courses, and they were joined MBA students, joined at a much lower salary than industry because they said that I could able to work with a professor who and I can learn from. So they did 2 3 years. Some of these people are in very big positions. A girl is heading a digital marketing agency in Washington. Another girl is working in Toronto. So all these people have worked with us. So I think the industry academia interaction in my case was very positive, and people liked my courses simply because I would actually talk about what was happening specifically in the marketplace at that point in time. So, if, for example, there was a crisis, we were actually working with a crisis for Sterlite, for one of our biggest clients, and I would share some of the challenges and people realize that, oh, these are some of the things that are happening. So, this is the real world that I'm going to get into. So, I think it really worked for us from that perspective.
Mhm. Awesome. Since from the start of the conversation, I have been noticing that most of the team members with whom you have mentioned are all from the female gender. So, do you think the female gender is more inclined towards advertising and they're more committed?
See, right now we do a lot of work in the PR, and then on the PR front, I keep telling all my lady colleagues who join me, saying that this is one of the industries where women have really made it big. The entire communication industry, and not only talking about PR, but since we run a PR and a social media company, advertising had its fair share of women who did some outstanding work and continue to be, leading. For example, many years ago, Tara Sinha ran an advertising agency called Tara Sinha Associates. I mean, she was a very famous lady. And we have in PR, we have, if you were to do a check, many of the leading public relations firms have, if not CEOs or directors, who are all women. So it is not a, uh,
Male
I
dominated.
think an industry that discriminates or anything. If anything, I find that clients tend to be kinder towards ladies. I'm not saying that they misbehave or anything. No, it's just like that. Many of them might be. This girl might be like a daughter to them because they're in their 50s, and here's this young kid of 25 coming and telling them what needs to be done. So I think it's there are, of course, you should not paint a completely rosy picture. One of the challenges with today's youngsters is that they're not used to anybody speaking to them harshly. Parents don't speak to their children harshly these days, right? I mean, they, even if they know that they're doing something wrong, they sort of find ways of, communicating to that. Clients need not be like that. So sometimes clients tend to be a bit, I would say, frank and forthright. But so we have had situations where people say, I don't want to work on this client, or I think these people treat us badly. So my standing instruction to all our managers is, don't take nonsense from anybody, however important. Our people, you must seem to protect our people. If there is a problem of inefficiency or non-delivery, fine, that's okay. But there is a means of communicating it. There's a way of saying that you're not performing. So I think we have tried to keep this in perspective, but I'll stay with my statement that women have a much greater chance of success in the communication industry than in others, in my opinion.
Mhm. Wow. So, what do you think are the three qualities which make a person a good communicator?
See, I think one is, we when we were young, we did Ren and Martin and all that stuff. So I think the basics of both written and spoken English are very important. I'm still saying English for the communication business, but for example, in advertising, some of the most successful writers are people who can conceptualize in Hindi. So I think the most important thing is the idea. How good is your idea? So original thinking is really what we are saying, and because India is a country of young people, the people who create advertising also are young people. I mean, some of the best advertising that we have seen is created by young people. Of course, you need older people to modify it and see how cinematographically you can make it and all that stuff, which they bring to the table. But the originality of the idea comes from young people. So almost 35 years ago, I was the manager of an agency called Mudra, and the youngest copywriter we had was a guy called Balki. So Balki later became one of the greatest minds in India, and then made several successful films. He started out as a young copywriter. So I think young people have a premium on ideas because they are not afraid of failure, because you can come up with the best of ideas. Somebody may knock it down, but I think the power of the idea is the most important thing, and they should be in an environment which sort of encourages it, because one of the reasons why people leave their jobs is their immediate supervisor. So if I, as a young person, find a supervisor who's not letting me flower, then I'm not going to stay. So I think it's our job as senior professionals to ensure that the young people in any organization are protected, and I think that's something that we try to do.
Awesome. So, was there a point in your entrepreneurial career where you felt that no, I just don't want to go ahead, I want to give up? So, what was that? Did you ever face a lowest point like that?
Yeah, I think, as I told you, when we were doing a lot of work with software, and then suddenly everything dried up, and we had an apartment. I had sold the apartment. I had to mortgage my house and everything, and I was just thinking, is this really worth it? Yes, there have been dark moments, and in fact, when we've recently been invested in by Madison 3, 4, 4, 5 years ago, at that time we were going through one of our worst patches, but and you know I was getting on in years and my children were not interested in the business. So uh, I I would say that we got into the partnership simply to protect our employees because we didn't want to get into a scenario where we. So I think there have been situations and scenarios where you felt that you are not doing what you should, and unfortunately or fortunately for me, by the time, so what happens when somebody fails in a business is that they go back to work, right? I was already over 55, so I don't think anybody would have given me a job. So I had to hang in there. So I
Mhm.
think in hindsight, it worked out. So I think one of the biggest things that I keep telling people, young people, is please start out when you're young. Because let's say when you start out, I started out when I was 47, that I thought is very old. But if you start out when you're in your 30s, and let's assume that you do your best for 5 to 8 years, and then somehow things don't really work out, you still have the opportunity of going back into the mainstream. So I think yes, everyone wants to succeed, and I'm sure we can, but you must always have a plan B.
Mhm. Okay, but having a plan B, what most of them feel is that when they have ventured out and they have shown to the world that they want to create something very beautiful, and when they find that it is not taking that shape, and then going back to mainstream work, the mindset is very.
No, so when I say plan B, it could be another entrepreneurial venture. It's see that you have so many serial entrepreneurs today. So I think one of the things that you see, I I didn't think of an exit strategy and all that when I started the business. Today, many of the people are thinking of an exit strategy. And the other thing about today's young people, I'm sure you must have talked to so many people. They may not tell you the truth in a program or anything, but when I talk to so many of my, not my colleagues, but so many young people, because our friends have children, etc., who are doing extremely well, everybody wants to retire by 45. So I want to tell them, what will you do when you come to my age? So everybody wants to see. They have seen a lot of people selling their ventures, making it big, investing in other companies, and playing golf and whatever. So said, why can't I lead this life? So I'm not sure whether it's as easy as they make it out to be. But people are thinking big today. They are thinking differently. And whilst there may be challenges, the other big thing is, see, our company was not very capital dependent, but it needed working capital, but none of the banks would fund it, saying that, these are book debts, we will not fund it. Today, thankfully, the culture and the climate for investment is much better. There are so many people who are willing to give you seed money. There are so many people who are giving you various stages of funding. So I think the environment for entrepreneurship today is much better than it was 20 years ago. So I think you will, plan B would be another venture, is how I look at it. Because you're already an entrepreneur, you know what you've been through, and probably you've learned from some of the failures of your first enterprise. So I think it's very interesting times we live in.
Mhm. Great. You guys have got around 6 to 7 branches, if at all I'm not
Yes,
wrong.
yes, yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to branching out, what are the few things which a person as a owner has to keep in mind to manage these branches well?
See, in our case, Bombay and Delhi may not be our most successful or our biggest branches because we are essentially very strong here and in Chennai. But in the media, all the big publications are from Bombay and Delhi. So if I do not have a presence in those markets, people will not come to me. So it is more a necessity. So I think one of the things that we have been facing over the years is that if you're a south-based company, you're going to have a challenge building up your operations in the north and west. But thankfully, because of our partnership with Madison today, who are very well established in these markets, so it was actually a very synergistic partnership. We were very strong in the south, and they were very strong in the north and west. So I think that has given us some good, leads and progress in the last few years. So I think you are going to have a challenge, and you'll constantly keep reevaluating, do I need this office, is there some other way of doing this? And now, thankfully, thanks to we work and many people working from home, you don't need to have a big infrastructure or setup in these markets. I think that's one of the things that we have learned.
Great. So, what has been your greatest learnings in this entire business journey of yours?
There have been a few things. I think the first is you are going to succeed only if you have the right people with you. See, there is only so much an individual can do. So, what I have been successful in doing is finding some good people wherever I worked, and I'm here also definitely Brand.Com, and empowering those people to do what they're capable of doing. See, because I cannot do, there's only so much that an individual can do. I can motivate you, I can, hold your hand when you're in trouble, I can, come as a guy without hair for a meeting, and somebody says, oh, senior guy guru is coming and all that. So I can do these things, but the person who's running our Chennai office or a Bombay office or a Delhi office is the person who's actually on the ground doing the work. So I think the value of the team is the most important thing that I have learned. The second thing that we have benefited from is long-term relationships with clients. um, we have had clients who have stayed with us for 20 years.
Wow.
So, means if there is something, that means that we are very comfortable to work with, easy people to work with. So, I think long term relationships. So, I have had a reasonably long term view of business. So, I think these two things have really made a big difference to our things. And finally, now, over the last few years, our partnership with Madison, because Madison is one of the largest companies in India. Their experience, they have 500 clients. So, when we go as part of Madison World, we are speaking a different language. So, I think all these things, really speaking, if you ask me to sum up in one word, you say, I've been fortunate. That's really what I can say. We Indians always believe a lot in luck and all that, no? So, and it's absolutely true. So, that's really what I'd like to say.
So, what would your message be to aspiring and growing entrepreneurs?
I think one is try. If you look at the really successful brands, they have been one unique, and second, they have been different from their competition. So, the most important word for me in the vocabulary of the entrepreneur has to be different. How different am I in what I am doing? How different am I in the way I'm working? How different am I in the way I'm giving consumer experiences? So, if your operative word is different, one of the most successful brands of all time is Apple, and their tagline is think different, because everything that they've attempted to do on product design or everything has been different. So I think we have to be different, and I think that is really, unfortunately, what is happening is many people feel that being different means doing a different advertising campaign. That is not the solution. See, you have to have a service which is different, or a product which is different, or your thinking must be different. So I think uh, that's the biggest challenge. And if you crack that, I'm quite sure that you're going to be very successful.
Wow, amazing. So, if we have almost come to the end of this conversation,
Sure.
and if you feel that we have missed out on any point which would have added value to this conversation, please add.
So I think one of the things that we, as an entrepreneur, you need to keep looking at is, do I need to morph or modify my business offering? As I told you, we started out as an advertising agency. And then what happened is the word brand. When I started in 98, people could not even pronounce the word brand. They would say brand. Things improved. Suddenly people started to talk about brands and valuation. And I started teaching in management school. So I realized that the brand is the most important thing. Then was another, I kept saying I'm fortunate, was another happy accident. I used to work for advertising for a brand called Van Heusen, and I did some good work, I thought. Several years later, the guy who was the president of Van Heusen and six, seven other people who were his directors in that company were starting a new venture. So he came to me and said, I can't give you advertising, though I know you're good at it, but can you do my PR? No, at that time I didn't even know what PR was. Okay, but I said I'll do it. And then, I found a colleague who was working in a market research company, and she said, I'll do it. And we did such a fantastic job. And they were our clients for 20 years or something like that. And of course, they got sold and taken over by Future Group, which was again our client. So I think the important thing is, from an advertising agency to a brand consulting firm to a public relations and now a social media firm, I find that there is a lot of interest in personal branding. How do you brand yourself? And today, it's a lot easier to brand yourself thanks to LinkedIn and Instagram and everything. And we are offering these services to CEOs, and they find it very useful. So I think the way you need to constantly rejig your offerings to the market is perhaps one of the things that I have learned, sometimes the hard way, but I think that how adaptable you are to the changing environment, I think will largely determine your success.
Mhm. Great. So, how does one bring out their brand values?
So I think if you really look at it, nearly 40% of the intangible assets, the assets of a company, are actually the brand. So why is Hindustan Lever such a valuable company? It's because of Surf Excel and Liril and Vim and all Clinic and all the brands that they have. So I think we have to understand that particularly in the consumer and consumer durable industry, your brands determine how successful you're going to be. Of course, in B2B, it will be the corporate brand, your company as a brand. I would like to deal with you because you're dependable. So I think there is greater realization of the value of brands. And if, for example, constantly studies are being done, am I really getting the value of this brand? Is it being suboptimal? So I think we use consultants to get work done in this space. So I think there's greater realization, and more companies are doing this stuff.
Great. So, if people want to get in touch with you, what would be the right way to get in touch?
See, normally I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I speak in so many forums. So sometimes somebody will come and give me a card and say, "I want to get in touch with you." So generally, I'm very accessible. I'm not, and all my students are all alumni. So because I realize that one of the things that have made me successful is IIM, where I studied, and where I have so many friends and so many clients who are from IIM, etc. So I think you should be very loyal to your alumni, and you should be very loyal to the people you come into contact with. So if somebody comes from IIM and says, I want to meet you, even if he's a junior person, he doesn't have an appointment, and I will definitely see him. So I think these are certain things that you owe your alma mater.
Great. Thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you and gaining huge insights about advertising as well as branding to a certain extent. Thank you so much for your time.
I enjoyed interacting with you. I really liked the questions. I hope whoever's listening to this benefits from this. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I thank Sridhar sir from the bottom of my heart for taking out time to share his wonderful insights of marketing communication, strategy, and brand management. Here are my top 6 takeaways. My first takeaway: have a startup mindset when you begin a venture, irrespective of whatever background you may have had earlier. My second takeaway: always offer a difference to your customer and keep upgrading services. My third takeaway: build strong relationship with clients who trust your capacity to deliver professional services. My fourth takeaway: develop principles of how to treat and value your team members. My fifth takeaway: organization building is a slow process. However, be committed to it. My sixth takeaway: de-risk your business by working across sectors. I'm sure there are a lot more takeaways for each one of you. So listen to this conversation again to understand the underlying meaning. Thank you so much.
Never lose out on an opportunity to learn about cultivating your inner strengths on Dream 100 Show. We strongly believe that life is just a play. We win some, we lose some, we miss some, and we mess with some. So enjoy your journey and play it to the fullest. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Dream 100 Show. And now, make a smart decision of taking the next step towards building your trust and your dreams. Don't forget to subscribe to Dream 100 Show and leave a review on Apple Podcast. Share your biggest takeaways with us and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. For more details, shoot an email to us. This is Savita signing off and catch you soon in our next episode.